This is Jake Busey, and you're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Berges.
Hey there, friends. Glad to be back today. And today we're going to be talking about validation. And I think it's something that many of us have looked for validation outside of ourselves. We're going to really focus on that on today's live conversation. We're doing these live conversations. We're trying to do them at least once a week at this point. So far, we're doing them on Tuesdays. And, hopefully people are getting in the groove. We usually don't know exactly what time, but we're planning on probably doing them from now on at 4 o'clock Central Standard Time, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is going to be probably the time that we're going to be doing this. So we're going to be getting in the mix of creating the show and doing this live. So the reason why I wanted to talk about validation today is because I find that a lot of us, we can make a lot of great friends. We can have really wonderful relationships. However, we can find that one person that we meet that doesn't really want us around, or doesn't like us, or doesn't include us, or finds faults in us, or finds problems in us, or sees the issues in us, or tells us how we're not doing this right or that right. And it's interesting how that one person, even though we have all these other people in our life that think highly of us, you have that one person that finds the faults in you, that sees the issues in you, whether or not they are or not there. And we go to these extremes to get that person to accept us and to see us for who we are. And it's interesting how I know that the human condition is based on the fact that we want people to understand us. We want to be understood. We want to have clarity of idea and vision. And so a lot of times when we want to be understood, we also want to be validated. We want that person to see our value, to accept us, to encourage us, and therefore we feel good about ourselves. But what I found is that a lot of us are looking for validation outside of ourselves, and what's happening is we're coming up short, right? We're not getting that validation. The person's not validating us. They're not giving us that check. They're not saying we're great, we're awesome, we're amazing. Quite the contrary. What's happening is they are finding our faults in us. They are letting us know what they feel we need to work on. Perhaps they're bringing this up to us on a constant basis. And we're looking for the validation, but we're just not getting it. So let's talk about what I mean by looking for validation outside of ourselves. Because really, honestly, based on how we were raised, the family dynamic in the family home, whether it was mom, dad, aunt, uncle, grandma, grandpa, whoever raised you, foster parents, adopted parents, whoever, the way that happened in the home directly relates to how we kind of process a lot of things in our life. So if the home was very warm and sincere and helpful and understanding and very thoughtful, and there was a lot of time being spent and there was a lot of effort being made, I've seen how people can grow up one way, where they're in a supportive environment that's not abusive, it's not angry, there's no emotional abuse, there's no physical abuse, there's no sexual abuse. Then you've seen folks who are somewhere in the middle, where there was neglect possibly, there wasn't a lot of interaction between mom and dad. Kind of the child was kind of an afterthought that, kind of had to be dealt with because it was their kid, but they were kind of in and out of that child's life. And then you see, the other extreme. So you see the extreme where people have dealt with abuse, they have dealt with neglect, they have dealt with those types of things in their life, and so their upbringing was extremely different. And I'm not saying that upbringing defines everything, but what I am saying is that in our formative years, when we're children, the way that we see things directly relates to how we see it when we're an adult. Unless we obviously seek therapy and work with a counselor, work with a life coach, work with somebody that really can help, or multiple people that can really help. unless we really pursue that self-knowledge and understanding and finding that unconditional self-love, we aren't able to pierce the veil, so to speak, of these issues that were created as children that dominate our life. Okay, so a big example I can give you to understand this that I think might drive this thought home. For example, when I've had clients who have been abused or severely neglected as a child. Okay, let's take that example. As children, when we're being neglected or we're being avoided or we're being abused, we don't see that. We see that, but we don't realize that the parent and their actions are the problem. We actually see to some degree that we must be a bad child. We must not be a good enough child. There must be something wrong with us, because otherwise we wouldn't be treated like this. Okay, so obviously, I'm telling you right now, treating a child outside of amazing and beautiful is horrific. Okay, so I'm gonna say that. But when we're treated like that, because we have such black and white thinking as a child, we believe that there's no way that someone could treat us like this, right? And us be a good child. There has to be something wrong with me. And so when you take that thought process through to, an older age, through adult stage, the way that we see things in relationships is very different. And we're looking for people to validate us outside of that. Okay, so because we didn't get the validation when we were a child. Because, in an abusive dynamic, in a neglectful dynamic, in a dynamic where I didn't want this child or what have you, when the parent is saying that, speaking that, acting like that, showing actions to display that, there is an issue that kind of coexists there, and it creates this dynamic where we're looking for that validation, we're looking for love, we're looking support, and we're looking for it outside of ourselves because we needed that help. And now as adults, we're still looking for that outside of ourselves to validate, because we feel as though if someone else validates us, then we're good enough. When I return, I'll be talking more about validation, really talking more about that point, and then talking about why we look for validation outside of ourselves and kind of explain that and how we can make some changes. But also, if you have any questions, I look forward to answering your questions as well. I'll be back. Ashley Berges here. I'll be back here in just a couple of minutes.
Are you currently in a toxic relationship and unsure what the next day will bring? Have you often wondered if there's more to life than this? Do you suffer from self-esteem issues that you've had since you were a young child? Have issues or have difficulty speaking with your family? Do you feel surrounded by self-centered people? Seems as though you're always giving and they're always taking. If you've answered yes to any of these questions, you need some answers. The 10-day challenge to live your true life gives you the knowledge and techniques for creating boundaries in your life that help us to deal with family, as well as dealing with those narcissistic and toxic people in your life. It offers the insight into understanding and overcoming your self-esteem issues, and to begin to see for the first time your amazing value. You owe it to yourself to find the power within you.
Hi, we're back now, and Ashley Berges here, and we're talking about looking for validation outside of yourself. First off, I want to thank Life is a Journey, Let It Go. Thank you so much for your support. Really appreciate you, and any content that you'd like me to talk about as well. I'm very interested in your perspective. Thank you so much for your support. Again, it means a lot to us. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, please, and go on and conversate here in the conversation, because we're able to really communicate back and forth, and I'll be answering some questions to you with the time that we have. I would like to do a longer show today, but I actually do see clients in office and then by Skype, FaceTime, and phone. So I actually have a client here at the 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So otherwise I would stay a lot longer. But let's go back to the validation and why we look outside of ourselves for validation. So like when I was talking about the upbringing and going through that process as a child, we think very black and white. So we don't say, wow, my dad is a really abusive man that has an alcoholic, that has an addiction to alcohol, and takes out his rage on me based on the fact that he can't control his own life, and because he's out of control with his addiction. We don't think that way as a child, right? We don't think that way. We can't process the fact that, wow, I think dad is suffering from this or that, or I think mom might be suffering with, borderline personality disorder or whatever. We're not thinking that. We're thinking, wow, I see the way that, my friends are treated by their family, and it just seems very different. I see the way that kids are treated on TV with these amazing families, and this is very different. And so we begin to think that we must not be a good kid, or that we don't deserve love, or that we don't deserve to be treated well because we would be treated well. And so that black and white thinking gets us to believe that our validation is only found within other people, and only if other people see us as being worthy or being good enough. And I think that many of us were taught at a very young age to look outside of ourselves, especially when our family, our parents didn't give us any validation. And it's like we didn't get the validation from them, and I think we were hungry and starving for crumbs of validation from somewhere. And that's where we deal with the toxic cycles, and that's where we fall into these toxic cycles growing up. This is when we're dating the folks that you look back and you go, man, I really dated all the wrong people. And some of you might have dated some people that were decent at the time, but you weren't ready for that relationship. So there's a lot of different things, but what we find ourselves is in a cycle looking for that validation, no matter where we're looking, just hoping to find it. And a lot of times it's back at the situation that our parents didn't validate us. I think a lot of times too, many of you were in dynamics where the only time that you were validated was when you did something really great. So let's say that, you were on the football team and you won the football game, and your dad, gave you a pat on the back and was like, son, you're so amazing. And that's the first son, you're so amazing you've gotten, in a couple of years. For some of the women out there, for some of you ladies, maybe you didn't get validation from your dad unless you got a major grade, or, you got a scholarship or something happened and you got that pat on the back, but you've been looking for that validation, for that acceptance for your whole life. And some of us are still looking for acceptance from our parents. And so some folks, no matter how old they are, it takes us our lifetime to figure out exactly who we are and to get it right. And so there's no time that's too late. There's no, oh my gosh, I'm behind the 8 ball, I'm too old. There's none of that. The time is now. It's the present moment. And so if you're dealing with saying, hey, I've always wanted my dad's validation, I've always wanted my dad's approval, I've always wanted my mom's approval, those types of things, it's because you feel like you never got it, and you feel like you need that approval to basically be validated, because we haven't looked within ourselves to find that. And so we don't feel like we're valuable until someone else in the outside world thinks we are and says we are. I remember even back in school, like in middle school, high school, where you weren't cool until someone else thought you were cool, right? Seriously, like you didn't get the cool card unless another person thought you were cool and then went around and told about how cool you are, but they had to be cool too. Otherwise, no, it didn't happen. And I think the same thing applies a lot of times in our own life, is that we want these people that we think are great to validate us, or we think are better than us, or bigger than us, or stronger than us. And when we don't get that, no matter how many hoops we jump through, we feel as though we've lost out. And I think that a lot of us come from that, the thought process of jumping through those hoops. Whether it's winning the game, whether it was getting the good grades, whether it was learning another language, whether it was getting a job and making enough money to Get your mom or dad to show some sort of respect towards you, whatever that looks like. And I feel that because of that, we never felt the value within us because we actually didn't know, I think, to some degree, that value starts within ourselves. I think it's, I've had clients that when we're working, they say the toughest work is when we're going through the negative broken record, and I'm having them go back and figure out when this record started. And these negative broken record comments are like, I'm not good enough, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not smart enough, my life is never going to be successful, I'm never going to be healthy. All those comments that dominate our life. I'm not loved, I'm never going to be loved, I'm never going to be married. And it's like getting back to where these began and understanding that. But in order to get there, we have to really pull back the layers of that onion, so to speak, and really work to not use the old coping mechanisms. The old coping mechanisms of, well, I'll just do something else, or I'll just entertain myself, or I'll just make myself busy, or whatever that is, or I'll date someone else, or I'll do this. Or, but the point is that we have to go within to say, what are we avoiding? And I think that this goes back to low self-esteem. It goes back to low self-worth. It goes back to having no unconditional love for yourself. And we don't see the value within ourselves because we've been taught for so long that we're supposed to look outside of ourselves for value, but that's just not true. When I return, I'll be talking about why we should look inside ourselves for value, and really how to begin that consult with yourself, because it's never been taught. They don't have a class for this at school. And most of our parents, even if they were decent parents and there was no abuse and there was no neglect, even then, they did not understand that information on their own. Okay, and it shows because we saw their dynamic in the marriage, right? So, and we learned from that dynamic too. Okay, we learned what not to do. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we can find self-validation, what we can do, and how to start on the road to going within instead of going without. I'll be back this time in just a couple of minutes. Stay with us.
Hey there, friends. I'm glad you're catching the live broadcast of Live Your True Life Perspectives. I've created my very own Patreon page. You can go to Patreon and you can check out my page. The link is right here. It's an amazing platform because I'm able to offer more stuff there, different stuff than I am on the Live Your True Life program, as well as on my YouTube channel. You've probably seen my YouTube channel. We put up new video content every week, and we have a lot of great content on there. But on the Patreon page, I'm able to go a step further. I'm offering group coaching sessions, private coaching sessions, as well as access to exclusive content, like the Celebrity Perspective Season 1. I won a Telly Award for that this year. You can watch all episodes right here on Patreon. I'm offering you the exclusive chance to come on the radio with me, to be live on Live Your True Life Perspectives, nationally syndicated radio show, to talk about yourself, to talk about your amazing life, and to inspire the Live Your True Life listeners. When you become a member of my Patreon page, you are directly supporting me to help other people to live their true life. I look forward to seeing you on Patreon. Let's inspire one another.
Hey there, glad to be back. And today we've been talking about finding self-value and why we look for validation outside of ourselves. And some folks have asked some questions, and I will answer those here in just a minute. But I want to Okay, so when we look for validation outside of ourselves, we do that because we've never been taught that we're actually supposed to go within instead of going without. We've never really realized our value. We've only seen our value coupled with other people. We've only seen our value based on the fact that somebody loves us or cares about us, or we have we get this friendship, or we fall in love, or whatever it is, or somebody pats us on the back and tells us, wow, it's amazing. But it's interesting how that really doesn't do anything for us. I mean, think about it. It might make you feel good for a few minutes, but it doesn't change your life, your trajectory in your life. It doesn't like go, oh, this is amazing. It's just like an award. We all want the awards, and the awards and accolades are good, but does it really change our life, or does it make us think about it for a split moment, maybe a few weeks or what have you, and then we go back to living that same life? And so the reason why outside validation doesn't last the test of time, right? The reason for that is because we have to validate ourselves and see our own validation first. And why do we have to do that? Because if somebody sees us and validates us, right, but then they leave, so does our validation go with them, correct? Another thing that's interesting too is that I feel that when we're dealing with this type of validation and we're hoping someone else will validate us and accept us, we have to remember that the other person actually has to understand how to validate themselves first. Again, I underline this. Most people don't validate themselves internally, so therefore they do not know how to give you validation, for real validation. They could manipulate you, they can tell you certain things, they pull the rug back, they can try to validate you or do what somebody would do that validates you. However, again, if I can't validate myself, I can't validate you. Because remember, acceptance and validation is the basis of unconditional love. And if I don't have unconditional love for myself, I can't give you unconditional love because I don't know how to do it for myself. Just like if I'm trying to teach you Japanese, I can't teach you Japanese unless I know Japanese. Like I could tell you I know Japanese, but I don't, you know what I'm saying? So I actually have to know what I'm going to tell you or teach you, and I have to know it very well in order to impart that knowledge. Same thing for unconditional love, acceptance, validation, all those things. And so let me tell you something. I've said this multiple times, but validation is like the water, okay? It's like a cup of water you're holding, and you're holding a full cup of water, and you're walking around with that cup of water, and you're drinking from that water. And when you're drinking from that water, it's like everybody wants to give you the water, okay? Validation. But when you don't have the water or you don't have validation, it feels like nobody's going to give it to you. The reason for that, and that was really compelling, the reason for that is that with validation, you have to validate yourself and the rest of it will fall into place. And if it doesn't have to. Do you see what I'm saying? Because it's predicated on how we feel about ourselves. That's why when you meet somebody that really seems to have it all together and really does, and you've seen all different sides of them, and you can see that they're loving, they're caring, they go the extra mile, and you feel that radiate from them. When we are actually in that lifestyle, that thought process, how we've gotten there is, first off, we basically reconcile with ourselves to understand who we are. And so let me answer some of these questions. First off, we've realized our value by we will only accept certain friendships and relationships that are not toxic. We've begun to realize the fact that we have been in toxic cycles, okay? And it begins by creating boundaries in our life by our values, our morals, and our beliefs. Okay, so what I like people to do is sorry about that, I have an alarm on here. What I like to do is I like to have people write out what are your morals, what are your beliefs, what are the things that are deal breakers, or the things that you believe in your life. What are the things that matter the most? Are you a spiritual person? Are you a religious person? Do you believe in, what do you believe? What are your values? What are your ethics? What are your morals? Because remember, we need to define ourselves as a whole person. We've been accustomed to just going along with the flow. We've been accustomed to just going into these relationships, right? Because that person we feel will validate us. But a lot of times in these relationships, we step all over our own values, beliefs, and morals because we want the other person to love us and like us, and because we're codependent in that nature, we'll give all of ourselves, we'll lose our identity in a relationship. But did we ever have the identity to begin with? One of the other things that I want you to think about is that negative broken record that I talked about. I want you to start documenting your thoughts, okay? If you can document your thoughts, we can begin to work through that and understand where the thought came from, how it started, and then we begin to remove that thought. Because if I have negative thoughts about myself that believe that I'm not good enough and I'm not valuable, even if other people validate me, I don't believe it. Do you see what I'm saying? See, that's the thing about other validation, is that unless you actually validate yourself, you can't understand why somebody else would validate you, and you don't understand where the validation is coming. Another thing that I want you to begin to think about how to see the value within you is to begin to look at yourself like you look at other people in your life. Begin to look at the things that you've done that are amazing. Begin to actually write down your triumphs. Begin to actually do an inventory of the things that you've done. And I want you to do an inventory of the things you don't like about yourself and really see, are they that bad? Is it a big deal? Are you being extra hard on yourself? I want you to begin to be a friend to yourself. You treat other people amazing. You take care of them. You're their friend. You help them when they're down. But what do you do to you? Usually you kick yourself when you're down. You feel bad and you don't take care of yourself, but you give all that love and acceptance to everybody else. I want you to begin to be a friend to yourself and define what is a friend. And I want you to think what a friend is to you. What is the best friend? What does the best friend do? What does a real, true, authentic, genuine friend do? And I want you to write that down in a journal as well. And then I want you to begin to see that you should be a friend to yourself and start incorporating that, because if you're nice and kind to yourself like you are to other people in the outside world, it's amazing how you will begin to open and bloom, and you'll begin to see things about yourself that you never really saw before because you haven't given yourself any credit. I have a lot more to talk about on validation. I have a lot more on talking about this. Unfortunately, we're limited a little bit of time today because I have this client coming up right now. But I want you to think about that. Being a good friend to yourself, but focus on what does a good friend do. Think about all the things you do for other people, like taking care of them. Possibly you make dinner for a good friend of yours. Maybe you go get a movie. That's what I started doing when over 20 years ago when I embarked on this process. I realized that I didn't take care of myself. I didn't love myself. I didn't do anything for myself, really. I would stand up in the kitchen and eat a sandwich that I bought from fast food and try to swallow it within 3 minutes, okay? I didn't take care of myself. I didn't eat food. I didn't make food for myself. I didn't do anything that I would do for my friends. And I want you to start doing things for yourself, spending that time with yourself, because that's really important. And it allows us to understand us, and it begins to unravel and show us our actual value. I want to leave you with one lasting thought. Okay, it's pretty intense, but the relationship that we have with ourselves is actually the most important relationship we ever have. That's the reason why we come in this world on our own. Even if we're a twin, we are born at a separate time. And that's why we leave this world on our own. Okay? Because the relationship that we have with ourselves is so important and it's so dynamic. And once we get that relationship right with ourselves, we can have those amazing relationships. We can find that amazing marriage. You can find those relationships because you know what you will and won't deal with. And you know what's important to you. And you also have a full identity. And you're not looking for your identity in other people. I hope this video has helped y'all, and I will come back and I'll also answer as many questions as possible. Because I want to do next week, I want to do a total Q&A where we can, do some Q&A time and everybody can ask some serious questions and I can answer them on camera. So we want to spend probably about 45 minutes to an hour show. In the process, we had a little bit of delay time with YouTube putting up this video, so I'm still trying to find it. I think we found it that it was unlisted from the previous video last week, so we're going to make sure that this is listed, and I'm going to walk through and answer any questions I can. Also, any questions you might have and any thoughts that you would like me to address in next week's live video, please let me know, because I'm interested in what you're thinking, subject matter that's interesting, as well as anything that I might not have covered here that I can turn around and answer at the beginning of the video next week. So I'm looking forward to that. Anything else that we should cover today? You good?
Well, we have one more question, but I'm not sure if you want to.
Okay.
It's basically, her name is Katarzyna, I believe.
Okay.
I have a partner for half a year. I get from her everything I always want, the validation, love, care, and trust. After 3 months, she tried to devalue me. Do you think that she cannot validate herself?
Do you think she can't validate herself? Oh, so she's devaluating you? Okay, so basically she did all this stuff for you. She put you on the pedestal, and then how long after was the devaluation?
3 months.
So in 3 months you've been devalued. And then she asked if it was her that's...
Yeah.
Okay. So in these situations, the fact is that when somebody puts someone on a pedestal and they don't keep it there, there's that devaluation stage. Unfortunately, As you probably already know, if you really truly love somebody, the devaluation stage isn't ever there. Okay? When people don't understand real unconditional love and they don't have self-acceptance and self-worth for themselves, they can only do that for someone so long, because I don't believe that they actually understand how to carry it through. But the next step is, I think it's a pattern in their life. So I think that you find people, when you enter into certain relationships, where they're accustomed to idolization, devaluation, discard, and it's kind of like it's a cycle, okay? And so you need to be careful of this cycle, because this could be a red flag to a situation of a toxic relationship based on somebody that might be, suffering with their own issues as well. A lot of times with the idolization, the devaluation, the discard can also be kind of a tendency of narcissistic people that are dealing with narcissism, various cluster B personality disorders. So it's something that you want to keep your eye open for. The thing is that when somebody idolizes us, though, when we do have real solid self-value, we begin to question, because to me, when we're in a relationship where two people are partners and equal, I'm not putting anybody on a pedestal. I love them and care for them unconditionally, and I don't judge them. I would hope that they would do most of the right thing, as far as I want to be able to respect them too, because unconditional love is different from respect. I can unconditionally love somebody at the core level, at the soul level, but I don't necessarily respect everything they do, right? All their choices they make. So I really would like to have a partner in that situation where there is no idolization, there is no devaluation. It's pretty much even kill, but at the same time, there's also respect and understanding. But when the person's doing that, it's also showing that there's manipulation involved. You want to be aware of any sort of gaslighting techniques used for manipulation as well. But another thing is that, remember, when we do feel good and comfortable about our self-esteem and self-worth, when somebody does put us on that pedestal, it can feel good, but I think we can begin to see through it a little bit. When we're dealing, though, with the dynamic from the past as a child, when we didn't get enough attention, self-esteem, we weren't shown that attention can be very powerful, and it can be very nice because we haven't had it. But once you hit that devaluation mark, you know that there's something up. And so I just, being that I want to support you in any way, I want you to really watch out for this and really see and be aware of some of these toxic cycles, and be aware of some of these red flags. It would definitely be something that I would bring up in a positive in a positive, safe way, and just explain maybe what you've seen, and kind of bring it to light in a positive way and in a calm way, and see what happens, because that should be a boundary. The devaluation should be a boundary. Nobody should devalue you. But again, when we're in a good, solid, healthy relationship, nobody should really idolize you as well. So I hope that has helped answer any questions. And, I look forward to hearing from you in the future, because that's a great question, and anything I can help with, I definitely want to. But I just want you to realize, as far as in a non-toxic, in a healthy environment, in a healthy relationship, there's none of these extremes. It's supposed to be pretty even, and both people are supposed to treat each other with dignity and respect. But it has to be based on the fact that each person respects themselves independently outside of the relationship. Are we good? Okie dokie. Well, thank you so much, and I look forward to being back next week. And if we can do any more live shows here in the interim, we will. But definitely expect us next week, same time, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Looking forward to it. Have a great day, and I look forward to hearing your comments and questions, and I will answer those ASAP. Thank you. Take care.